Vulgar Display of Power was the most important record of our career. We had conquered Texas, and we were packing out clubs, and we were used to sold-out shows, stage diving galore. This is back when real circle pits were circle pits and violent, but very controlled chaos, and with rules, hidden rules of the day, you know. Someone stage dives, you catch them. And then we got our first U.S. tour, which was with Suicidal Tendencies and Exodus. And we were obviously the opening band, and all of a sudden, we were the tiny fish in this massive ocean called the rest of the world. There were several audiences that didn't like us, didn't understand us. So by the time we got around to recording Vulgar Display of Power, the chip on our shoulder, our collective shoulders, was massive.
It was at a time when Pantera was so hungry we would do anything to take over the world with our music.
Vince Paul, he was the one who said, I don't give a fuck if it's 2 people or 7 people or 10 people. Our job is to kick their fucking ass every single night, and word will spread.
We had just played 338 days on the Cowboys run and went directly into the studio. I think we might have had 3 weeks off. So we were red freaking hot.
We worked with one of the best record producers I've ever worked with, Terry Date.
They did things on their own terms. They didn't care about what major labels or what other people were telling them to do. They did what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it.
It was a very, very, very focused record.
The work ethic was pretty intense. Our hours were 12, 13, 14, maybe longer. I remember a lot of sunrises on that record.
And this is back when everything was analog, there was no cheating, so it took take after take after take, you know, every chorus.
The band had been touring. We had to go in and write the songs.
We had hit kind of a roadblock in the writing sessions.
You want your voice to do something and you've tried 1,000 times and it's not doing it.
Phil never broke chairs in anger.
Terry told me one time, the only other guy that might have broken as many chairs or stools as me was Chris Cornell.
You know, we had as much fun as we could with it.
And Phil, I think Philip had the riff for a new level, or had an idea and wanted to get it to die, but he had to get on that same wavelength.
He knew what he wanted, and you know, he didn't stop till he got where he wanted to go.
Okay, let's take a break.
And I remember Dom and Phil went outside and smoked a joint.
Phil, remember that pot I said you couldn't smoke earlier until we were done? Take a hit, brother. Take a hit, man. Relax.
And when they came back, they had this thing.
You go out there and you nail it.
That chunk of that groove, I think that set the whole tone for the whole record.
Right towards the end of the record, we were about 2 weeks away from completing it. We got a call from our A&R guy, Mark Ross, and said, hey man, they just had this big coup in Russia, man, and we would love to have you guys come over and play.
We were loathed in Europe.
We hadn't played live because we've been in the studio.
It was a pretty big deal for the band and myself, playing in front of a crowd that was that size.
And we packed up all our gear, we flew to Russia, and we played to 1 million people.
This is called domination!
And Europe saw us at our strongest, smoking every band we opened for. It was almost embarrassing for bands to play after us. It was usually embarrassing if a band had to play after us. And you know who I'm talking about. You bands out there who got your asses handed to you.
Going from packing out everything in the Arlington region to playing around the world kind of validated what they were doing.
And it's documented. It's called For Those About to Rock, and it was the first time to ever play with Metallica or AC/DC. And the fans had no idea who Pantera was, but they treated us like Led Zeppelin. It was just an amazing experience, and we got right back into the studio and finished the record.
I saw them wanting to give their fans a record that reflected what they saw when they were playing it live.
As a musician, it's one of those records you just pinch yourself, you know. It happens just so naturally, and we knew how to play it. We played off each other so well that we knew exactly where the breaks were going to be, and when we listened back to that, we were just a bunch of like little kids, at Christmas time.
By the time we recorded it and were ready to tour that record, we were in our strongest bodies. We were in the prime of our youth, and we took that chip on our shoulders to every single show, every single city, every single state. To me, that really signified our first true album of what was to come.
And the highest it ever got on Billboard was number 42. People find that hard to believe. 42. Our next record, Far Beyond Driven, number 1. But that record only got to number 42. But it did sell platinum in many, many countries around the world.
Vulgar Display kind of laid the groundwork, and I think Pantera was the band that carried metal through the rest of the 90s.
When that band was huge in the mid-90s, a lot of people thought metal was dead.
We just slipped through a crack. Metallica just had the Black Album, which I loved, Wylde. And then you had Nirvana around that time. We're never influenced by any of that kind of stuff. We had our own sound and what we were doing.
Pantera kind of breathed some new life into it. It was still pretty good in the underground, but there was nothing big, and Pantera was the one band that was out there being big.
Vulgar Display of Power is my favorite Pantera record. To me, it's their Rain and Blood.
That's one of those records that really starts to separate from the pack.
It brewed shit up and just changed everything.
Now you listen to it and it sounds like it's common. Everybody, all the metal bands kind of sound like that, but at the time, those were like pretty brutal vocals.
The standard metal singing now really, in a lot of ways, came from Phil.
It really inspired us to keep that heavy growl,
I watched every single vocalist shave their head, take their shirts off, and wear those khaki half-cut-off military pants. Even Rob Halford turned into Phil Anselmo's look.
Some of the vocals, like on Hostile, he did his vocals in the control room with me on a handheld mic. And when it was all distorted, of course, on purpose. And when we were done with the vocal take, he just took the mic and threw it into a garbage can next to the board that had a bunch of barbecue sauce and stuff on it, and it fed back, and that's the feedback that you hear at the end of that song.
As well as, of course, Dime being able to just, shred.
When I heard his guitar, I was like, what is happening? I mean, it's like Spaceman who just came down from Mars and was just
He was kind of tortured by the fact that he always was going for something, and we could never quite find it 100%. Dime was a perfectionist. Tone was a big deal, although when we spoke of tone in the studio, it usually was referring to if somebody didn't smell good. But his ability to hear minute things and sounds was pretty incredible. We would many times make mixes where I would raise a fader the width of one pencil mark, just a minute amount, because he could hear it a little louder. And I was thinking that nobody could hear this, but then I'd play it back for him with the different versions, and he got it right every time. He knew exactly what he wanted to hear. And my job was to try to interpret what he heard.
Dime's legacy as a guitar, it's pretty much right there with Tony Iommi
in regards of he's the king of that genre of extreme metal and, you know, the power groove and all that stuff.
He was, you know, breaking all the ground, and he was, you know, the next guitar hero. You had, you know, Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, and Dimebag. He was just the next in line for metal guitar heroes, and I don't know if anybody's come close since.
I tried my best to like learn Dimebag riffs, and it's hard. It's really hard.
One of the things people don't know about Dime, he had a guitar in his bathroom. I went in his bathroom one time. I sat down, I was like, he's got a guitar, and he's got his little tape recorder. What's that doing in here? I said, Dime, what's the deal with the guitar in the bathroom? He goes, man, that's where I write all my riffs. That's why my riffs are the shit.
Every time I think of Pantera, I think of Dime. I don't feel the spirit of Dimebag ever leaves you. And once you knew Dime, he's with you forever.
The musical chemistry of Pantera was undeniable.
A lot of years under the belt playing together, growing up together.
The way the brothers worked on guitar and drums, phenomenal.
Vinnie's drumming, I remember, was just totally influential for me at that time. He would tape like silver dollars on his kick drums with like a wooden beater and stuff. So I remember I tried that for a little while too.
Vinnie's his drum sound. Nobody's drums sound like that. His drums still sound like that.
Yeah, amazing. So powerful. Like there's nothing that it still stands up today when you pop it in. It's like I heard a remastered version of it, and it was just like now it's loud and just in your face.
Rex on the bass, it just warmed it out nicely.
He had an amazing ability to make his tone complement and stand out also. Rex has always been one of my favorite bass players, tone-wise and performance-wise. I didn't know how good he really was until a few years after we'd stopped working together. And I did a recording with him, a separate recording, and it kind of blew me away at how good his tone was, how dialed in he was to the nuances of a bass tone, which is very difficult in this kind of music to really have definition, because lots of times it's just the low octave of the guitar.
They had shred, they had Phil as the angry singer, and then they had this groove swagger. So they had three really key components that kind of changed the course of where heavy metal went.
Every single band that exists today has some sort of influence by Pantera.
They're trying to touch Sabbath, they're trying to touch Metallica, and they're trying to touch Pantera, man.
You won't even listen to it 10 years from now and be like, it sounds kind of old. It doesn't. It even still sounds really modern.
You know, there's albums like that. You know, you have Back in Black, Van Halen 1, and Vulgar Display is definitely one of those type of albums. It's just an absolute classic from start to finish, a perfect album.
The album cover was definitely a bold statement, exactly what that record did. A punch, you know, to society, like, you know, check this out.
I remember Dime taking a picture of a face and putting it on his dad's copy machine and taking the face as it was copying and moving it so it blurred across like the cover does.
To me, it made sense, that album cover, to have a guy getting punched in the face, because I knew what a hardcore boxing fan Phil was.
First thing they brought us were all these pictures of these boxers fighting each other. It's like, no.
Oh, okay.
That's not what we're looking for. That's not what Vulgar Display of Power is. It's some guy getting jacked on the street.
They wanted a hand, a fist, hitting a long-haired guy. And at that time, long-haired models were extremely popular. I was calling everybody frantic. I was even considering going out and casting it off the street.
Some guy off the street and...
just a dude off the street?
A dude off the street, man. The label.
At the last second, I know Ford Model Agency called me and just said, hey, we have a long-haired model coming from LA. You know, and he came in and he was perfect for the shoot. His name was Sean Cross. We ended up becoming very good friends, best of friends. He was actually one of the groomsmen in my wedding, actually. At that time, I was getting really well known for a style that I was developing, and that was like a lot of movement to photographs and photography. I would take images and I would combine strobe with tungsten, and then I'd put the shutter speed of my camera at a slow shutter speed, like an 1/8 of a second or 1/30th of a second. And through the movement, it would blur and it would become soft, and you'd have these like striking like movement to pictures. So I was well known for that. So I believe that was obviously the reason why they called me, because they wanted some kind of drama to what could just be just a straightforward picture.
I guess it turned out to be an actual punch that was captured from somebody.
The man on the cover was paid $10 a punch and was hit in the face 30 times to get the right picture.
31 times. 31 times.
According to Vinnie Paul, the man on the cover of Vulgar Display of Power was paid $10 a punch and he was hit in the face 31 times. This is one of the most widely disputed.
32 times.
32.
Yes. Yeah, he got hit a bunch.
31 times, that's $310.
$310.
I've heard the stories, and people have asked me many, many times, but that's not what happened. It was a professional photo shoot. He was pushed quite hard, actually, because I really wanted it to look physical. So he was pushed really hard, each and every time, but he was never punched per se. I shot the album cover in color. I remember getting the film back and looking at the chromes on a light box and just going, wow, these are gorgeous. So I was kind of shocked later on, months later, when I actually saw the album cover and saw it in black and white, and that they even kind of pixelated it. Personally, I thought it would have been better in color.
Vulgar Display of Power was the most important record of our career, and that, I do believe, puts a bow on top of the story.